thank you very much for giving me the chance to chat with you, Stanley. Looks like you're on a tour right now.
Yeah, we're at the beginning of we actually started in San Francisco a couple days ago, and then we're going to go play up until August. We have some few dates here in Canada, some Northern America stuff, East Coast. And then on July 1st, we go to Europe, and we come back in August sometime, beginning of August. Nice. It's nice to play in Europe in July, the summer festivals.
Not too hot?
Yeah, it's great. Even if it's really hot, it's great, because what I like about it is I get a chance to see a lot of friends of mine that I normally don't see when I'm back in the States. And usually a good slice of the music community is in Europe in July, because all the big festivals are there. So
people that we would know? Friends
yeah, just like whoever, the various bands, all the different jazz bands, smooth jazz bands, even rock bands and rappers, the whole music festival scene now is, even though, you can look at a festival like the Montreux Jazz Festival, it's pretty much less of a jazz festival now than it used to be, it's like, for me it's okay, because I'm a person, I like all different types of music. But those festivals will have all kinds of groups on there. And so me being one that has friends that play many different genres of music, it's nice. It's July, I'm always running into someone. I know Chick Corea is we're going to meet up somewhere in Pori, Finland. I think we're going to see Ali Miola somewhere. We're going to see a lot of people from different places.
Do you guys get to play together?
Well, Chick expressed that he'd like, I think we're on the same show, he says we should play together at the end of the show. So that'll be nice. I mean, it's nice. I like, in those festival settings, sometimes anything can happen. Back in the 70s, it was actually sort of expected that all the different groups would kind of mingle up at the end. Like many of those festivals at the end, like the Pori Jazz Festival in Pori, Finland, was a great festival because, people came to the halls to hear the music, but where the real action was the jam session after the show that went into the morning. And I was a very young man back then, and I could do that, stay up until 5 in the morning and play until 5. It was great. It was fun, a lot of fun.
Are there such jams these days?
Yeah, probably so, but I'm in bed at those times.
Sounds sensible.
Yeah.
What about the guys in your band? Do they get out?
Well, I have young guys in my band, so they're out there. They're doing exactly what they should be doing. I have a keyboardist that's about 30 years old from Los Angeles, Cameron Graves, and I have a pianist 19 years old from the country of Georgia, Becca Gochiashvili, and we have a phenomenal drummer from Dallas that just turned 20. So they're young guys, and it's fun.
So is it the school of Stanley Clarke then?
Kind of, I really get a kick out of playing with the young musicians. I like the energy, and these guys are really kind of at the top of their game as young musicians. They're going to obviously change and evolve as they get older. But I think as young musicians, they're like really at the top of their game. And it's great. It's really great to see young guys come up and appreciate jazz and how they fuse other forms of music that they like, and it's really cool, to see all that now.
Does that, does that keep you interested in playing? To play with the guys?
I don't really have any problem with keeping interest in playing. I've done so much music, and I've spent so much time preparing music, and I do so many different things in music, whether it's live performance or whether I do movie scores or whether I produce records or then myself as a composer. I mean, there's always stuff to do, so there's always interest in some, maybe sometimes a year I might not tour as much as I would, maybe I'll work on a film score, so the interest is all there. It's pretty easy. I just wake up in the morning and it's all there.
That's good to have. Not everybody can sustain that passion and the interest.
The key is having a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have much to do with how much money you make, because I know people that make tons of money in music and they're bored as hell. It just has to do with, you whetting your appetite for everything that you do. If you like to compose, it's important that you compose a certain amount every month. If you like to tour, it's important you should do that as well, and other things. One of my favorite things I like to do is to teach music. I've taught a lot of bass players in my life.
Is that private or through a school?
Yeah, I've taught a lot of guys that people know. I've taught them how to play it. And I really enjoy it. I like taking someone that doesn't know anything about anything and then take them from that point to being a player. That's the most fun to me.
How do you see the balance between technical capabilities and understanding the music itself?
I think it comes down to the language. I think if you have a lot of technique, you can have an extreme amount of technique, but if you don't have a language, the technique's really not going to do anything. Because part of like playing, people like to say, well, he's very technical, or say a musician, but he leaves me a bit cold. And some of that is because the person just maybe leaning too much on his technique, but the other part is just he's not presenting a language. I mean, you can have all the notes, A, B flat, B, C, all these things that you can do on an instrument, but if you don't have a language, like the language of jazz or Charlie Parker's language, bebop or blues, like B.B. King, the way he plays, it's a language. It's a specific language. He deals with like 7 notes, 5 notes, or whatever it is, but it's his language, and it's killing. You don't want him to change and do anything else. They're guys that play sitar, they have their language. Jazz rock musicians, fusion musicians, smooth jazz, straight ahead jazz, rock and roll, death metal, this, that. There are all these different languages, and what makes it cool is, if you decide to do one of those or express one of those, or even create your own language, it's great. You gotta have a language, something, and I think part of the emotion gets carried through that language and resonates with people because they can kind of relate. It's why you have different types of fans. Some people are blues fans or jazz fans because they resonate with that language.
As a teacher, other than yourself, do you tell your students to listen to people to learn that language?
What I do is I tell my bass students to listen to all the different kinds of bass players. My favorite kind of bass players are guys that are like chameleons. They just blend in with whatever's there. I believe that a good bass player, I'll say a ultimate good bass player, someone that's way on the top, should play electric bass, have an acoustic bass, be able to play it, be familiar with all the different genres, jazz, straight ahead jazz, smooth jazz, R&B, and of course out of one of those genres, the person is going to excel more in one. Maybe he's really an R&B bass player, but he should be able to handle all the other things. The really good bass players that get hired a lot are guys that, number one, understand the function of a bass. Like, the function of a bass player is basically bringing rhythm and harmony together in a group. Bass players' duty is to come up with a great bass line to enhance a song. I believe that if you're in a band, you're a bass player, and say singer or whatever comes up with a song, and your job is to come up with a bass line. If your bass line doesn't enhance the song, make it better, bring it more alive, you haven't done your job. You know, I normally don't criticize bass players, but I have one small criticism. A lot of young bass players now seem to be more interested in soloing on the bass. And I got to tell you that no bass player has ever, in my opinion, been defined by a bass solo. You know, you have to be able to play bass lines and enhance songs. And that's an art. That's a real art form. James Jamerson made a whole career out of that and created some great bass lines to make, you know, good songs and at Motown into great songs. Spectacular songs because of his bass lines. And that's the ultimate gift that a bass player can give to the world, is to come up with just a killer bass line that everybody remembers. And it just takes a moment. You have to have patience, you know. And I tell you, I've seen good bass players in sessions tell the guy, "Well, wait a minute, just give me a couple seconds," and the guy's just banging out something that seems really simple. Everybody's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then, okay, let's do it. And then when you hear, you say, "Wow, whatever time you put in there really worked out," you know. And that's to me, that's where it's at.
I noticed warming up there that you were bowing some Bach cello solo.
Oh yeah. I you know, I have a very traditional study on the acoustic bass, and my plan originally was to play in orchestras. I was going to audition for the Philadelphia Orchestra, but I met Chick Corea. Chick kind of talked me out of it, and but that's it. Yeah, I've done that piece. There's a recording on YouTube where I did the whole Bach cello suite number 1, G major, and
On your bass.
On the bass. It's difficult on the bass, but it can be done. I'm up in the thumb position pretty much the whole time, 99%.
Wow.
And yeah. It's all can be done. Yeah, I spent a lot of time, you know, like developing technique on the bass, you know, and like what I was mentioning earlier, you know, I take my time when I write music, and sometimes I will restrain myself from using techniques, especially with songs. Like when I wrote the song School Days, it's a very simple line with fifths going down the bass. And I remember restraining myself because when I was writing it, there's a funny moment. I was watching television, and the band Return to Forever that I was with, we won a Grammy. I didn't really know much about the Grammys. I was just watching the show, and Ella Fitzgerald and Mel Torme, they said, "Yeah, the winner of the best performance by a group, Return to Forever," and instead of Chick Corea, they said Chuck Corea. And Ella Fitzgerald, you know, corrected Mel. "No, this is Chick Corea." And I was so happy, and I thought, man, this is great. We got an award on television. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot on television about music and musicians. And I got really happy, and that's when I banged out School Days. It took me about 5 or 10 minutes. And when I had all these things, and then I stripped it down to the basic thing, and that song kind of changed my life. And in the life for many other players too, because it's kind of a bass anthem that kind of, I guess, there's a sense of liberation for bass players, because the whole song's a bass solo basically, you know, and there wasn't a lot of that then. Because there's some very talented and very intelligent bass players that, you know, should have gotten out there and did their own thing, which eventually now they do. Now it's a normal thing for a bass player to make a record. Hell, you can go to a college with an electric bass and learn how to play and study as an electric bassist. I mean, that was unheard of in my time.
Right.
Electric bass was kind of the sidekick to the acoustic bass, you know, and you just carried on. But now it's a legitimate instrument. I'm really happy about that.
Do you have any bass players out there that you really like?
I'm the biggest fan of bass players. There's so many of them. I mean, I like, of course, Marcus Miller, Victor Wooten, but I like some of the young new guys. There's a guy out of France, Adrian Farad. I can never really pronounce his name. Hadrian. It's like Hadrin, and Farad is Fur something. French guy. And then there's an extraordinary bass player out of Chile named Christian Galvez. That's killing. These guys are kind of like the Speedy Gonzalez types, but I admire the technique. They play the bass more like guitars, but I appreciate what they do, you know. And then there's many others. I like this bass player named Thundercat. He calls himself Thundercat. His real name is Stevie Bruner, and he's out of Los Angeles. And he has a kind of a following. He plays with this guy called, he calls himself Flying Lotus. And they have this kind of little niche in the music business. They have these fans, and it's really interesting. It's like kind of jazz, fusion, R&B, this. It's a real mixture of a lot of things. And Stevie has a tremendous facility on bass, and he calls himself Thundercat. And I would suggest people check him out. It's very, very good, very cool stuff.
What do you think with when you first got into jazz? If you will go back to Chick Corea, it was a different era. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have very good handheld recorders. What do you think of the state of jazz or the music that you play?
The business of music and records is crap right now. A lot of it has to do, I think, when file sharing started. That, as much as I love, that people are able to get music for free and they can, like when my records come out, I can go to a site the next day after my record's released and download my whole record. And I'm sure thousands of other people are doing it too. The problem with that is not so much the money to the artist. The problem is that the money, a lot of people like to put the record companies down. But I'll tell you something, what the record companies did that was good is they were able to give budgets to people to make records and make good records. Like, you're not going to have a Jimi Hendrix Are You Experience record again. You're not going to have the Dark Side of the Moon. You're not going to have the White Album by the Beatles. I doubt very seriously if you're going to have A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. Doubt it. I mean, just the mere fact that when it comes on iTunes, it's broken up in tunes. And these records that I just mentioned, Sgt. Pepper's, are meant to, they're works of art. It's a work. It's a battery of songs. It's like it's like a symphony, and you're not, so that kind of bothers me. What the record companies did is they provided funds for people to go into the studio and take some time to flush out something. Nowadays, the majority of the records that are made too quick. And they're just, they're done like, wow, I got some time this day, and they do it, and so, sometimes some artists, they're not skilled enough to just go in and do something in a day. That doesn't mean that they're not a genius. Genius has nothing to do with time. I mean, look at the Beach Boys, that first album that they made. Now, I wasn't a big Beach Boy fan, but I can tell you that first album, that's some genius stuff that they did. When you look at the time and what they were doing at that moment, the harmonies and the different instruments, and that took time. They didn't just go in there and do that in 2 days and throw it on a laptop. So that's the thing that I miss today. And that's the downside of what I think technology has done. Because technology has not only has it, well, that's the good part is it embraces people, and anyone can make a record. We can make a record if we had a laptop in here. We can just record, forget this concert. By midnight we'd have something. you know, whatever you play, we just do it. But the downside is that it enables people with computers to just get music for free, which puts the record companies in a position that, you know, they just don't have, they can't take the chance to, you know, give this guy $1 million to make a record, or hell, give this guy $100,000. I mean, they're not really giving anything now. A lot of these record companies, it's zero. And so it's difficult to produce the kind of stars that, special personalities. I don't think that will ever happen again. You know, I don't know much about this girl Taylor Swift, but it's kind of refreshing to see that she will not allow her music to go into these platforms that are going to just, you know, have her music sold for nothing, for free. I mean, I get, you know, I have kids, and like my kids can't even remember when they bought a CD. And I get that. I get the whole free thing, and it's fine, but there's another side to that. That's the downside, and that's what I'm speaking on right now. You know? So, you know, it just would be nice to see an artist develop. You know, when I was signed to a label, the normal thing was like it took 3 records for an artist to really develop. They don't have that anymore. You just got to come on the first record or forget it.
Interesting.
But something else will happen. I have a lot of faith in the human experience, and I'm sure something will happen. Something will break. You know, the state of jazz, or just music itself, really lies in the hands of the artists. You know, as you know, when it comes to what it sounds like. You know, it's evolved, and in many ways, you know, music and ways of playing, sometimes they come and they go. And this may sound strange to you, but I think that's the natural order of things. I think sometimes bands have to come and then go so new bands can come in. And that's what keeps the music going. You know what I mean? Like if Louis Armstrong was still active today, he's like 100 years old, playing the trumpet, you know, I mean, it'd be great. We'd love it and respect it. But, you know, Miles Davis had to come. And then after Miles Davis, you know, Terrence Blanchard had to come, and now you got these guys, Ambrose, and another guy named Christian Scott that plays, Wallace Rooney. You know, it's just the natural order of things. I'm fortunate in that you know, my career spans over 40-something years. You know, I just keep going. I refuse to stop. You know, and I believe my music is still relevant, you know, and I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do that. I like doing it.
I should probably let you get ready for your show.
Yeah.
I think
going. You asked the right question. I was going.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, good luck.
Thank you for your time.
Man.
Have a good gig. Cool. Thank you.